A man often discovers his deepest collapse not in storms or catastrophes, not because of disaster, but because of her gaze. The woman he thought would lift him, redeem him, confirm his worth, instead looks at him with quiet disdain, a respect already gone. He wonders what he did wrong, blind to the truth that it was not what he did, but what he became. Søren Kierkegaard once wrote, "The greatest hazard of all, losing one's self, can occur so quietly that it is almost as if it were nothing at all. And this is where men fall, not in betrayal, not in cruelty, but in the silent surrender of their own selves. Modern men build their entire worth on the fragile stage of feminine validation. They believe that by orbiting her desires, she will admire them more, not realizing admiration dies when the self disappears." Kierkegaard spoke of despair as the sickness unto death, the condition of living as someone you are not. And when you erase yourself to gain her affection, you are already diseased. She cannot respect the man who treats his soul as disposable. You thought your sacrifice was love, but it was despair in disguise. You thought that changing your speech, your dress, your schedule, even your very friends for her would bind her to you. But it only revealed the truth, that you fear your own solitude more than you value your own identity. Kierkegaard warned, "The most common form of despair is not being who you are. And when a woman senses this despair in you, her instinct is not compassion, but contempt. Men imagine women despise cruelty, arrogance, distance, but what they despise most is need disguised as nobility. You call it devotion, but she sees it as dependence. You call it love, but she sees it as a contract. You erase yourself in exchange for her approval, and she cannot admire a man who bargains away his essence. She may take what you offer, but she will not bow her respect before it. Respect is never given to the man who kneels before illusions." Kierkegaard argued that the self is always a relationship to itself, and when that relationship breaks, when you no longer ground your being in authenticity, you become nothing more than a shadow cast by her preferences. You think she will cherish that shadow, but a shadow inspires no awe, only pity and eventual boredom. The woman who once looked at you with fire now looks at you as a child lost in a costume. And that is the moment you feel her pull away, not because she is cruel, but because you have ceased to exist. The tragedy is that you mistake her coldness for her betrayal, when it is in truth your own. You betrayed yourself long before she withheld her touch, her admiration, her warmth. You betrayed yourself the moment you thought her love could replace your authenticity. Kierkegaard said, "The most painful state of being is remembering the future, particularly the one you'll never have. And that is exactly what men live, a dream of respect that never arrives because they forfeited the only condition for it, their own selfhood. You believed that pleasing her was strength. You believed that bending was love. But bending is not strength. It is surrender without a fight. And surrender in the name of affection only invites disdain. No woman respects a man who cannot stand upright in the face of desire. This is the paradox Kierkegaard laid bare. The man who clings to her as salvation destroys the very foundation of her respect. She may admire your tenderness, but not your trembling. She may enjoy your affection, but not your absence of spine. For the more you orbit her, the more she sees you not as a man, but as a mirror reflecting her will. And mirrors do not command love, they are only used. So here you are, thinking devotion will win what only authenticity can secure. You mistake your desperation for virtue and call it loyalty. But she sees through it, not maliciously, but instinctively, because women cannot admire what has already surrendered. Kierkegaard warned that despair is the refusal to be oneself before God, and you have chosen instead to be a caricature before her. And for that choice, respect vanishes as naturally as night follows day. The cruelest truth is that she did not take your dignity. You handed it over, believing she would protect it. She did not ask you to kneel. You knelt, believing it would inspire her devotion. But what you call sacrifice, she calls weakness, and what you call romance, she calls escape. Kierkegaard's words echo here. To dare is to lose one's footing momentarily. Not to dare is to lose oneself, and the man who never dares to be himself will always be despised by the very woman he tries to please. There is a silence that enters between a man and a woman, not when love dies, but when respect does. You feel it when her eyes drift, when her laughter grows softer, when her body is present but her soul has already walked away. You think it's distance born of mystery, but it is contempt born of recognition. She has seen the truth, that you are no longer standing as a man, but bending as a servant. Kierkegaard once said, "The proudest and most tragic of all illusions is to think that by losing yourself, you gain the world." And this is exactly what modern men live out in their pursuit of high-value women. When you chase her with your whole being, you think you're proving your devotion. But what you're proving is that you are terrified of being alone with yourself. A woman can sense this fear like smoke in the air. It seeps into every gesture, every word, every silence. You tell yourself you're strong, but she sees through to the truth. You are clinging, not choosing. And no woman respects a man who cannot choose himself first. Kierkegaard described despair as the refusal to face the responsibility of being a self. You refuse because it is easier to construct a false identity that exists only in her gaze, and for a while she will play along, flattered by your worship, entertained by your loyalty. But worship soon turns to weight, and weight soon turns to chains. And what woman desires to be bound to a man who cannot even stand in his own skin? Respect requires freedom, and freedom requires selfhood. You think your generosity secures her loyalty, but generosity without self is not love, it is bribery. And bribery is never admired, only tolerated until something stronger comes along. Kierkegaard warned, "To cheat oneself out of love is the most terrible deception. It is an eternal loss for which there is no reparation, either in time or eternity. And when you cheat yourself out of authenticity to buy her affection, you commit this very crime. She may accept your gifts, but she will never give you her reverence. What you call compromise, she calls collapse. What you call patience, she calls weakness. What you call romance, she calls dependence. And though she may never say it aloud, her heart speaks clearly. This man cannot lead me, for he cannot even lead himself. And the one thing no woman can endure is to follow a man who has abandoned his own direction." Kierkegaard understood the paradox of love, that only the man who is whole within himself can truly give love without begging for return. He wrote, "He who is not capable of standing alone is incapable of love." Yet modern men seek love precisely because they cannot stand alone. And so what they give is not love but need, not strength but vacancy, and vacancy is never admired. A woman may nurture a child, but she cannot respect a man who plays the role of one. Every glance she gives you is a test, not of your devotion, but of your authenticity. She leans back, and you rush forward. She hesitates, and you over-explain. She withdraws, and you beg. And with every act, you prove that you are shaped by her, not by yourself. Kierkegaard would call this the despair of the aesthetic man, forever defined by the outside, never grounded in the eternal within. This is why modern men are disrespected, not because women are cruel, but because men betray their very essence. You thought being good would be enough, but goodness without selfhood is nothing but submission. You thought loyalty would bind her, but loyalty without boundaries is suffocation. You thought adoration would make her bloom, but adoration without strength is like pouring water into sand. The more you give, the more disappears. And so she looks at you with that quiet disdain that haunts men at night. She is not angry, not hateful, not even cruel. She is simply disappointed. For she expected a man and found a mirror. She expected a leader and found a follower. She expected authenticity and found despair wrapped in devotion. The truth Kierkegaard whispers across the centuries is merciless but liberating. To dare to lose one's footing momentarily is not to despair. Not to dare is to despair. You never dared to be yourself. You never dared to risk rejection by standing firm in your own being, and so she rejects you anyway, not for what you did, but for what you failed to be. And in that rejection, the illusion of love crumbles, leaving only the echo of respect you forfeited. There is a secret terror that modern men carry, and it is not failure in the world, but failure in the eyes of a woman. You can conquer in business, in strength, in wealth, yet crumble at the thought of her disapproval. You confuse your existence with her affirmation, as though her gaze alone proves you are alive. Kierkegaard warned of this when he wrote, The self is a relation which relates itself to its own self. But the man who relates only to her loses himself entirely, and once lost, he becomes unworthy of respect. Kierkegaard understood the torment of the inauthentic man. He called it despair, not of weakness, but of cowardice, the refusal to face the weight of existing as a free self. You think you escape this by molding yourself into what she wants, but you are not escaping despair, you are drowning in it. And the more you mold, the more she sees clay instead of stone, pliable where she craves firmness. She does not respect you when you cancel your plans for her, though she may smile in the moment. She does not respect you when you soften every word, though she may thank you for kindness. She does not respect you when you apologize for truths, though she may accept your apologies. What she sees is a man too afraid to stand in conflict, too eager to trade authenticity for harmony, and harmony bought with fear is contempt in disguise. Kierkegaard once wrote, "Anxiety is the dizziness of freedom." The modern man feels this anxiety and flees from it, running into the arms of a woman to steady himself. But what he does not see is that she was waiting to see if he could bear it, if he could stand the vertigo of being a self. When he collapses instead, she may hold him, but she will never honor him. For respect is given to the man who stands in his freedom, even when dizzy, not to the one who runs. Every time you beg for reassurance, you confess your despair. Every time you wait for her approval before you act, you admit your emptiness. Every time you redefine yourself to avoid her rejection, you betray your own soul. And betrayal of the self cannot be hidden. She feels it, smells it, knows it. And once she knows it, her heart turns cold, not because she is cruel, but because nature itself cannot admire the hollow. You think she is testing you when she pulls away, but she is only responding to what you've shown. You revealed that her absence terrifies you more than your own absence from yourself. You revealed that you would rather lose your integrity than lose her affection. And so she learns she can shape you, bend you, use you. But respect cannot exist for the one who willingly erases his boundaries. Kierkegaard's words ring louder here than ever. The most common despair is to be in despair at not willing to be oneself, but deeper despair is to will to be another. You have chosen the deeper despair, fashioning yourself into her fantasy while abandoning your reality. And though she may enjoy the fantasy for a season, every woman eventually tires of playing God to a man who refuses to be himself. For no woman wants to carry the weight of a man's soul. The irony is sharp and cruel. You sought respect by surrendering, but surrender is the very reason she withholds it. You sought love by self-erasure, but erasure is the reason she turns away. You thought worship would inspire awe, but awe is only reserved for those who dare to exist without asking permission. And when she looks at you with disappointment, it is not hatred you see, it is grief for the man who never showed up. Respect dies not in her cruelty, but in your absence. So understand this, not as accusation, but as truth Kierkegaard foresaw. Women cannot respect men who hide in them. They may desire, they may use, they may linger, but they will never bow their admiration. Respect belongs only to the man who risks being himself, who dares to offend, who dares to lose her, but never loses himself. And until men reclaim this courage, they will continue to wonder why women smile with their lips but grow colder in their eyes. The answer has been written for centuries. You are despised because you abandoned yourself. There is a cruel irony that Kierkegaard would not have missed. The very men who give everything are the ones women respect the least. You believe that emptying yourself is the highest proof of love, but love that costs you your selfhood is not love. It is slavery. You hand her your identity wrapped like a gift, hoping she will treasure it. But no woman treasures what a man discards. She looks at you, not with gratitude, but with disappointment, for she knows you abandoned the very thing that made you worthy of her respect. Kierkegaard said, "The self is the conscious synthesis of infinity and finitude, and when you dissolve that synthesis into her approval, you vanish. Every time you silence your opinions to keep peace, you are teaching her that your truth is negotiable. Every time you rearrange your life to orbit her desires, you are showing her that your time has no weight. Every time you apologize for being yourself, you are proving that you consider yourself a mistake. And what woman can respect a man who declares with his actions that he is unworthy of existing? Respect dies not in conflict, but in cowardice. Kierkegaard once wrote, "Anxiety is the school from which one learns the possibility of freedom. Yet men today treat anxiety as proof of unworthiness, begging women to soothe them. But she does not soothe, she grows cold, because she expected you to face the dizziness of freedom and you fled instead. She expected you to withstand uncertainty, and you collapsed into dependence. And the moment you collapsed, her admiration died. It is not her cruelty that erodes you, it is your cowardice. She cannot revere a man who hides behind affection because he is too afraid to reveal his own convictions. She cannot admire a man who seeks her validation like a thirsty beggar waiting at the gates. You think she disrespects you because she is selfish, but she disrespects you because you refuse to be someone she could follow. Respect cannot survive in the shadow of desperation. The tragedy of the modern man is that he mistakes obedience for love. He believes the absence of conflict is the presence of connection. He believes the constant yes is proof of devotion. But Kierkegaard would call this despair, for he wrote, "Despair is precisely the absence of self. And when your yes is nothing more than the silence of a missing self, she hears it not as devotion, but as emptiness. You imagine that loyalty will redeem you, but loyalty without individuality is suffocation. You imagine that attention will secure her, but attention without boundaries is noise. You imagine that sacrifice will bind her heart, but sacrifice without strength only repels. She may enjoy your gifts, but she does not admire your surrender. For a woman cannot respect the man who becomes invisible in his effort to please, and so you sit across from her, watching her eyes dim, watching her smile grow thin, wondering what went wrong. You gave her everything, but she wanted something you never thought to give: yourself. You mistook self-erasure for romance, but romance without authenticity is a mask, and masks cannot be respected, only pitied or discarded. The moment she sees the mask, she sees the end. Kierkegaard's wisdom cuts like a blade here. The most terrible despair is not to be conscious of having a self. This is the despair you live when you try to be everything for her, while being nothing for yourself. She cannot respect a man who hides his soul behind gestures and gifts. She cannot honor a man who refuses to confront his own emptiness. And until you dare to be yourself, she will keep looking at you with that silence that feels like death. There is a certain look women give men, not loud, not dramatic, but devastating. It is the glance of disappointment, the recognition that what stood before them is not a man, but an echo of her own will. You mistake it for mystery, for distance, for mood, but it is simply the absence of respect. She does not say it aloud because she doesn't need to. You can feel it in her silence. Kierkegaard once wrote, "To dare is to lose one's footing momentarily. Not to dare is to lose oneself, and the man who will not dare to stand as himself inevitably loses her reverence." Modern men confuse constant agreement with strength. They think that harmony comes from surrender, that devotion comes from silence, that safety comes from erasing themselves. But harmony without tension is not harmony, it is emptiness. Devotion without individuality is not love, it is codependence. And safety purchased with self-erasure is nothing more than despair hidden in affection. Kierkegaard taught that despair is the refusal to be oneself in the face of God, but modern men refuse to be themselves in the face of women. They choose her approval over their own truth, her affection over their own integrity, her comfort over their own growth. And the cruel irony is that by choosing her over themselves, they lose both. For no woman can love the man who abandons his own soul. She may enjoy the benefits of your worship for a season. She may indulge in your gifts, your loyalty, your constant attention. But indulgence is not respect, and no woman wants to build her life with a man she secretly pities. She does not crave your obedience, she craves your authenticity. And when that authenticity is gone, her attraction decays with it. Kierkegaard once wrote, "The greatest hazard of all, losing one's self, can occur very quietly." And so it is with men today. They lose themselves without realizing it. One compromise at a time, one apology at a time, one silence at a time. Until one day, they look in the mirror and see only the reflection of her desires. And when she sees it too, she cannot admire it. You believe that unconditional giving proves your love, But unconditional giving without boundaries proves only your fear. You are terrified she will leave, and so you erase yourself piece by piece to keep her. But the more you erase, the faster she withdraws, until the cycle completes. You give everything, and she respects nothing. This is not love. It is despair wrapped in ritual, and despair never inspires admiration. She may stay with you out of convenience, out of habit, out of pity, but not out of respect. And without respect, intimacy becomes obligation, tenderness becomes performance, and closeness becomes suffocation. You think you've won her heart, but what you've lost is her reverence. And reverence is the foundation of desire. Without it, all that remains is the slow decay of affection. Kierkegaard would tell you that the cure for despair is not devotion to another, but the courage to stand before yourself. He wrote, "The most common despair is not being willing to be oneself." And this is why women disrespect modern men, not because they love too much, but because they refuse to be themselves in love. Respect cannot survive when a man makes himself a stranger in his own life. Understand this. She does not need you to be perfect. She needs you to be real. She does not need you to be endlessly agreeable. She needs you to be unshakably authentic. She does not need you to erase your edges. She needs you to stand firm in them. For it is the man who dares to risk conflict, to risk rejection, to risk solitude, who commands respect. And respect, once lost, cannot be bought back with gifts or apologies. The lesson Kierkegaard leaves us with is simple but brutal. Despair is the true cause of disrespect. You thought it was your lack of wealth, your lack of charm, your lack of timing. But it was never those things. It was your refusal to stand as a self, and the woman who once looked at you with fire will always grow cold to the man who hides behind her love. There is nothing more unsettling to a woman than a man who hides his emptiness beneath affection. She may smile at his devotion, but deep within she feels the weight of his absence. You believe she is cold because she does not return your intensity, but she is not cold. She is cautious. She senses that you are not standing as yourself, but clinging as if her presence alone gives you existence. Kierkegaard once wrote, "The greatest hazard of all, losing one's self, can occur so quietly that it is almost as if it were nothing at all. That is the hazard modern men fall into every day. The more you idolize her, the more she sees your idolatry as proof of despair. Women do not admire shrines, they admire strength. They may enjoy being praised, but they cannot respect the man who forgets himself in worship. For admiration cannot flow to the one who has abandoned his own ground, and when you are no longer standing, you are no longer a man in her eyes." Kierkegaard understood that despair takes many forms, but the deepest is the despair of willing to be someone else. You take her cues as commandments, her moods as laws, her needs as your identity. You believe this makes you noble, but it makes you hollow. And hollowness never inspires devotion, it inspires distance. She cannot admire what is shaped entirely by her will. You think her tests are meant to punish you, but they are simply calls for proof that you have a spine. She withdraws to see if you can stand alone. She challenges to see if you can hold your ground. She resists to see if your truth is strong enough to withstand her storm. And when you collapse, she feels not safety but sorrow, because her respect dies with your fall. Kierkegaard once said, "The most painful state of being is remembering the future, particularly the one you'll never have." This is the agony of the modern man. He dreams of respect, of devotion, of admiration, but he never receives it. For he has traded his future for comfort, his authenticity for approval, his selfhood for illusion. And when the illusion breaks, all that remains is the memory of what could have been. Respect dies, and with it, the dream of love. You thought the absence of conflict would guarantee her affection, but it guaranteed her contempt. She does not admire the man who never disagrees, for she knows he has no convictions. She does not admire the man who never resists, for she knows he has no strength. She does not admire the man who never risks rejection, for she knows he has no courage. Respect is born in defiance, not in submission. Kierkegaard knew that love without freedom is not love at all. He wrote, "He who is not capable of standing alone is incapable of love." And yet men today seek love precisely because they cannot stand alone. They think dependence will secure devotion, but dependence only secures pity, and pity is the enemy of respect. The modern man chooses despair because he cannot bear to face himself. He hides his lack of courage behind gifts. He covers his emptiness with loyalty. He masks his fear with tenderness. But women always see through the disguise, because respect is not born in gestures. It is born in authenticity, and authenticity cannot be faked. Kierkegaard wrote, "Despair is the sickness unto death, the sickness of not being able to die." What he meant was that men live on, breathing, smiling, working, but already dead inside because they have abandoned their selves. And when a woman senses this death, she withdraws, not because she does not want love, but because she cannot love a man who refuses to live as himself. Her disrespect is not cruelty, it is recognition. You thought love was safety, but true love is risk. You thought devotion was enough, but true devotion requires individuality. You thought selflessness was noble, but true nobility demands courage. And courage is what you abandoned the moment you decided to please instead of to stand. Respect cannot follow the man who refuses to risk losing it. Kierkegaard once said, "To dare is to lose one's footing momentarily. Not to dare is to lose oneself." This is the truth that separates men who are respected from men who are despised. The daring man risks rejection, risks solitude, risks failure, but stands as himself. The undaring man molds, apologizes, begs, and loses himself so quietly he does not even notice until her eyes turn cold. And by then, it is too late. The cruel reality is that she cannot save you from yourself. She may love you for a time, she may nurture you, she may hold you, but she cannot respect what you refuse to be. You hoped she would be your redeemer, but Kierkegaard's philosophy shatters that illusion. No woman can redeem a man who will not face his own despair. Redemption is not found in her arms. It is found in becoming who you are. So what must you do? You must face the terror you have avoided. You must face the dizziness of freedom without running to her for balance. You must face the despair of being alone until it breaks open into authenticity. You must become the man who is whole within himself, so that when he loves, it is not from fear, but from strength. Only then will she look at you with respect that does not fade. Men who seek respect through surrender will always find contempt. Men who seek love through erasure will always find pity. Men who seek salvation in women will always find despair. But men who dare to stand as themselves, who dare to bear the weight of their own existence, will find that respect is given freely, not demanded, not bought, not begged. And that respect is the foundation of love. Kierkegaard's voice echoes across time. The most common form of despair is not being who you are. Let that truth pierce you. Let it awaken you. For if you continue to live as a stranger in your own life, women will continue to disrespect you, and you will continue to wonder why. But the answer has always been clear. You abandoned yourself, and respect died with you. So rise, stand in your solitude, risk her rejection. Dare to be yourself, even if it costs you everything. For only then can you command the respect of a woman, not through fear, not through gifts, not through worship, but through authenticity. And if this truth shook you, if it stripped away your illusions and forced you to see yourself clearly, then like, share, and subscribe. Support the channel through the link in the description, not because you seek comfort, but because you are ready to live without illusions, ready to face yourself, and ready to become the man Kierkegaard dared you to be.